could join the military again, would you?
Yes, I would.
How did the military affect you starting a family?
Well, I started the family in the military. It didn't really affect that much. In fact, all three kids I had, the military paid for the delivery of them and all that. So, and then basically, they were all civilians. I was the military, so they pretty much had freedom in that, where I was the one that had to abide by the rules and all that.
How did the military affect your family after you had kids?
Hold on.
How did the military affect your family after you had kids?
Not really much. Except for they had to, every time I got a new assignment over, we had to, instead of just packing me up, we had to pack the whole family up and go to the next base. Basically, that's it.
What was your highest rank?
A5, Staff Sergeant.
Can you explain what those are?
Well, you start out in Airman Basic and Basic Training, and then you go Airman, Airman First Class, Senior Airman, then Buck Sergeant, which is the same rank as Senior Airman, but you get a star on your sleeve that shows you're a Buck Sergeant, and then Staff Sergeant. So that was.
What was your job?
I worked on a test shop. We had computers that they take the parts off the plane and bring in to us, and then we'd run on the computers, and they would tell us what to fix, and we'd fix the units and send them back out to the flight line.
How did your family affect the military life? What benefits could you have now that you're a veteran?
Well, I got what was called a GI Bill, so it would pay for my college if I decided to go. I was also given, I could get a house loan with VA benefits, and that's it. And then also I have some VA benefits if I need to use the VA hospital. Okay.
How difficult was it to relocate as often as you did?
Yeah, it was sort of difficult. I mean, since I had a family, instead of just me, I mean, we had to pack everybody up, and basically we'd have to pack all the boxes up, and especially when we went overseas, and then the military would pick them up and they'd send them over there. When we went to Okinawa, though, when we got there, our house stuff hadn't arrived yet, so we had to borrow stuff just so we could move into a house. It took about a month for all of our hold baggage to get there, so that was kind of tough.
What made you decide to resign from the military?
Wait, hold on.
What made you decide to resign from the military?
I just don't think we could have made it another 10 years. I would put in 10 years, and we just kind of wanted to get out and get back to civilian life, and where we didn't have to worry about moving, and so the kids could be in one school and have some friends and that, because we were just moving so often that they just didn't have any roots.
How did basic training prepare you for military service?
Well, it taught us attention to detail, patience. We had to, teamwork, stuff like that.
What additional training did you require after basic training?
after basic training, I went to Denver, Colorado for tech school. That was 8 months long, and that's where I learned my electronics and some of what I would be doing when I got to my first permanent station. After we got to the first permanent station, then we had what was called career development course, which was probably another 8 months. So it was basically 2 years really before I was really adequate to do my job.
What was your rank when you resigned from the military?
E5 Staff Sergeant.
What was the food like?
I didn't think it was that bad. People complained and that, but I don't think the chow ho food was bad, especially when we got to tech school and my permanent duty. It was a lot better than the basic training food.
What did you think of officers or fellow airmen?
I got along with all of them. They were all good teamwork, and they would help you out if you needed help. And I mean, they were pretty good people. The officers, they were always fair.
You said one of your benefits was the GI Bill. Can you explain what that is?
The GI Bill, well, there's like 3 different parts of it. The one is for college. They would actually pay for your college after you got out, or actually you could get it while you were still in. But they'd pay for at least 2 years of college if you wanted to further your education. Then you had the home loan. They would guarantee you a home loan. That was another part of the GI Bill. And that's pretty much it.
Did the military help or hurt you get a job after you resigned?
Both. I wanted to get a job in electronics, what I trained for, and I sent resumes to these big companies and all that, and basically they said they couldn't pay me what I was worth because of especially like when I went to Magnavox, and they could only start me out on the line, just assembly, and I really wanted to work a little higher than that, and so I ended up going to a foundry to work because they offered overtime and I could support my family with that overtime.
What kind of financial perks did the military give you?
Pause.
What kind of financial perks did the military give you?
Well, we got, on top of our basic pay, we got housing allowance. Since I was married, we could live either off base or we got on a list to live on base. But they would actually give us an allowance for the housing, and we also got a little extra allowance for lunches or meals and that, because I was no longer using the chow halls on base. So we were preparing our meals at home, so they gave us a little extra for that. We also had a little bit of extra we got for a clothing allowance to maintain our clothes, and that's it.
Did any of your close relatives serve in the military?
My father was in the Army during the Korean War, and I believe for 3 years. And then I had 2 daughters that joined the Air Force. And at the time right now, I have got a son-in-law who is still in the Air Force. He's stationed in New Mexico.
How was life living on the military base?
Military base is basically like a small town. They had post office, they had grocery stores, a hospital. It wasn't much different, except for you didn't have the freedom that you had downtown. You couldn't have a bonfire in your backyard or certain stuff that you're used to in civilian life. You couldn't do that on the base.
How were you treated when you were off base in uniform?
We were treated with respect. Most of the bases I went to were very military oriented. The people downtown really backed the military, and would occasionally would give you deals on all kinds of stuff. You get some kind of a discount, and most of the people were real friendly people.
What were the rules on base and off base?
The rules off base, really, you couldn't wear your uniform just in any old place downtown. You could maybe pay a bill or something, but you couldn't wear the work uniform. It was fatigues. You couldn't wear them and like to go in a store downtown shopping. You could go in certain places if you had your dress uniform on, but on base, they were a lot tougher on base, the rules.
How much extra traveling did you get to do?
We got to do a lot of extra traveling. Besides seeing most of the United States, I went to Holland for a TDY, and when I was there, we got to see Germany and Luxembourg, Belgium, and then had another, I went to Okinawa, and there we seen Okinawa. We went to Taiwan, so we saw quite a bit when we was in.
What were your uniforms like?
Well, we had fatigue, which was a work uniform. It was kind of an olive drab green, and they were basically they were a work uniform. And then we had our blues, which were the dress uniform. That's what we had for when we had parades or important meetings and that.
Have you revisited any stations, and how have they changed since you were there?
Yeah, I've revisited two bases that I was stationed at. One was Virginia, Langley, Virginia, and the other was Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico. Virginia, the biggest thing I remember, the biggest thing that changed that I remember was when I was stationed there, there was sorties. That's each flight a plane goes out on is called a sortie. There were planes flying 7 days a week, and when I went back to revisit it, it was like a ghost town. I mean, they had very few sorties during the week. They had nothing on the weekends. They're pretty dead. And in New Mexico's, it's pretty much the same. They did have a couple of new planes. They got drones there in New Mexico. Those are pretty neat to see. And they changed quite a bit. It's just not as active as it used to be.
Thank you for your service.
You're welcome.